because I predict these things.
Ange Loosa takes on Phil Rowe this Saturday at UFC Fight Night Atlanta. And this is a very evenly matched fight in my opinion. You know, both these guys had several fights in the UFC, being kind of 50-50. And kind of curious to see where these guys go, where they go in their careers, if they're going to kind of stick it out in the UFC or going to get their walking papers soon, because both coming off of losses. Ange Loosa coming off of a loss to Gabriel Bonfim, before that a no contest to Brian Battle, and Phil Rowe on a 2-fight losing streak. Lost to Jake Matthews and then Neil Magny before that. Pretty competitive fights back and forth with Jake Matthews. Neil Magny was a split decision. Not a lot going on in that fight. I think it could have gone either way, so not really upset about the split decision. But Phil Rowe just not very active. Came into the UFC off of Dana White's Contender Series win by knockout, lost to Gabe Green by decision, then went on a 3-fight winning streak by KO, but then has only fought twice since June of 2023. Hasn't fought since June of 2024. So going to be at a year off coming into this one, taking on Ange Loosa, who also hasn't fought since July of last year. So both these guys being off for about a year. We'll see if ring rust plays a factor in this one, but I think the story of this fight is going to be is Ange Loosa going to be able to get his takedowns, and is Phil Rowe going to be able to keep it on the feet and put out more volume? You know, guy kind of gets off to a slow start at times, doesn't throw enough punches to get respect to win fights. So I'm curious to see how this one plays out. Phil Rowe is going to have a significant reach advantage. He is 6'3", 6'3" with an 80.5 reach, and Ange Loosa is 5'10" with a 74-inch reach. So he's going to be 5 inches taller, have a 6.5-inch reach advantage, which is going to be pretty significant in this one. So Ange Loosa, 31 years old. Like I said, 5'10", 74 inches in reach, fights out of Kill Cliff. Big, strong guy for the division, kind of muscled up, has really good cardio for how thick and, you know, muscular he is. Good grappling, good entries on his takedowns. Took down Gabriel Bonfim like 3 or 4 times in the first round of their fight, which was pretty impressive, you know. Bonfim, you know, he was the better striker in that fight, kind of pieced him up on the feet. Fights really well behind his jab, 1-2s at range, was landing really good knees up the middle. And Ange Loosa just proved his toughness in that one, you know, which isn't the greatest characteristic to have in a cage fight. I mean, it's nice to be tough, but at the same time, we don't want to know how tough you are through 3 rounds of a fight. We want you to be kind of evading and, you know, landing your own strikes without getting hit. But he can take a lot of punishment, especially to the body. You know, he's a tough guy. He went to a 3-round decision with Jack Della Maddalena, which is impressive. But he has a decent jab, good head movement, has powerful combos when he lets his hands go. But usually he's just kind of using them to set up his takedowns or to get you to the cage to work in the clinch and eventually get you to the ground. And he has good leg kicks, which is going to be important in this one against Phil Rowe, who doesn't do the best at checking leg kicks. He has kind of thinner, tinier legs that don't stand up very well to leg kicks. So be curious to see how that plays into this fight. And Ange Loosa has really good cardio, can push forward, push a really high pace, which I think is going to be, you know, his game plan and his path to victory in this one against Phil Rowe. Try to keep him pushed back against the cage, not let him get really any offense going, and look to get his takedown. So Phil Rowe, like I said, 6'3", 80.5-inch reach. He's the older guy, 34 years old. Fights out of Fusion Excel Performance. He is a jiu-jitsu brown belt, been doing a lot of grappling on the the grappling scene. I think he did a match against Craig Jones not too long ago, but 56% takedown defense. Doesn't have the best takedown defense, which is going to be significant in this one because Ange Loosa's path to victory, I think, is getting this to the ground. He was taken down by Jake Matthews. He was taken down by Jason Witt 4 times, Orion Koshi 2 times, Gabe Green twice, Leon Shahbazyan once, and, you know, some of those fights he won. So who's to say that he doesn't get taken down several times by Ange Loosa and still win the fight? But he's very long and rangy for 170. Has power on the feet. We just haven't seen it in his last 2 fights. You know, like I said, he started out his career with 3 knockout wins, but since then we haven't seen him drop or really hurt anybody. since then. Kind of hurt Jake Matthews in their fight, but nothing to really write home about. He has good leg kicks, but like I said, he's susceptible to leg kicks when they're coming his way. He was dealing with a lot of offense from Jake Matthews and wasn't really able to get his own offense going. Matthews had like a lot of forward pressure against him, and I'm concerned that maybe Ange Loosa is going to be able to replicate that game plan and keep Phil Rowe on the back foot. So, very close fight. I think the odds have Phil Rowe at a small dog, Ange Loosa at a -130, which I understand. You know, we haven't seen these guys in a while, and still kind of up in the air as to, you know, how good these guys are. But I'm going to go with Ange Loosa in this one. I feel like he's just a little bit more tenacious on the feet, looking to land power shots, get his takedowns going. Whereas Phil Rowe, sometimes he's just stationary, kind of plods forward, doesn't really move that well. He used to move well, like you see his fight with Nico Price, he was moving well, had a little bit of swag in there. But his last two fights, he's just kind of plodding forward, not really getting a lot of offense going. Had a very lackluster fight with Neil Magny where he was just like, he was kind of getting pressured back and, you know, pushed around the octagon by Neil Magny. Grappling was getting nullified. Jake Matthews was a smaller guy like Ange Loosa is going to be in this one, and he was pushing forward, landing, you know, really good shots on the feet. Was able to kind of out grapple him on the ground, get reversals, and land the better ground and pound at times. I'm concerned. I don't know if Ange Loosa, you know, one of my big concerns is will he be able to get past the reach of Phil Rowe, who obviously is going to have the 6.5-inch reach. But I think he's going to, you know, he does throw really good combinations to cover distance. And, you know, guys have no choice but to cover up because he does have power. And I feel like he's going to utilize that in this one to get Phil Rowe covering up to shoot his takedowns. Matthews had a lot of success in that last fight with him kind of crossing the void and landing good shots while moving forward and just kind of keeping Phil Rowe on the back foot and defensive. And like I said, Phil Rowe, he was just kind of stood there, didn't really move as well as I would like to see, kind of plodded forward, kind of relied on that distance gap of some of these guys having to cover, like Jake Matthews having to cover to get to him. And wasn't really able to push forward and put a lot of volume out there, and, you know, and utilize his reach advantage against Jake Matthews. And he was just kind of low output at times. And, you know, Loosa, I think he's going to be pushing forward, keeping Rowe on the back foot where he won't be able to kind of get his offense going. And I think he's going to be able to mix in his takedowns as well and get Phil Rowe to the ground, who, you know, historically doesn't have the best takedown defense. He's big and tall, which can help with you know, being able to post and stay up, but then he's also not he's not the most big or physical guy to be able to defend a guy off of him like Ange Loosa. So I'm going to go with Ange Loosa. I trust his cardio to push a high pace and to be looking for takedowns, throwing big power shots against Phil Rowe. And I trust him to be able to take the shots that Phil Rowe's going to be throwing. You know, Phil Rowe does have power. He's accurate. He fights well behind his jab. But we just haven't seen it from him as of late. We haven't seen him really sparking guys or hurting them. And I look at his record, the guys that he is beating and knocking out is Nico Price, who's tough as nails, but, you know, he's kind of at the end of his career when he fought him. Jason Witt, Orion Kashi, I just don't think these guys are very good competition. Leon Shabazian, he knocked out on Dana White's Contender Series. And then I look at the rest of his career, you know, 4-5, 1-2, 0-3, 0-1, 1-1, 0-1. Like, he fought nobody before he got to Dana White's Contender Series and fought kind of another nobody who was 7-1 and now 9-4. Started his career 0-2. Got knocked out in his pro debut, and even had a kind of a 50-50 amateur career going 4-3. So I don't know about Phil Rowe. I feel like he matches up well. He gets guys out of there and finishes guys that aren't the top tier caliber. But I just think Ange Loosa is going to be a little bit too thick for him, a little too physical, a little too strong in the clinch to be able to push a really high pace and get this one done by decision. Thanks.